students, good to see you back on the Bio channel. If you have not had a chance to go check out the Introduction to the Biosphere and Biomes video with Ms. Weller, then you should do that before watching this video. That's right, I got Ms. Weller to join in on the fun. My secret goal before the end of the semester is to have all of the cohort teachers star on this channel. And now we will turn to the biology portion of this video. We are studying ecosystems now in biology as our final unit. Now is the time where we take everything we've been learning all semester, starting from those tiny macromolecules, carbohydrates, and proteins, going up to cells. Cells, we then started looking at organisms, and through evolution, we looked at how we can speciate and create different organisms. Finally, we looked at how we could classify all these organisms into 6 different kingdoms. And now it's time to look at how those organisms interact with each other within an ecosystem.
Notes. So on page 115, let's title that for Introduction to Ecology. Just capture a quick definition for ecology. Ecology is going to be the study of all the interactions between organisms and their environment.
I'm only going to be bringing up 2 main concepts for biology this week. The focus will be more for geography and making sure you really know the biosphere and the biomes within the biosphere. The first of those main concepts is biodiversity. Biodiversity is formed from the words biological, of life, and diversity, having many different forms. Biodiversity refers to all the enormous amount of variety of life on Earth in all its forms and all its interactions. That is an astounding amount of things to think about. I think it's very important to bring up this term now at the beginning of our unit, because one, you probably already noticed there's vast amount of diversity or variety among the biomes. And then that would imply that within the biomes themselves, there's also another level of diversity. It's also good to bring this up at the beginning of the unit because you will be able to track this diversity all the way through as we study relationships between different organisms within their ecosystems. Biodiversity is going to be at once the most complex thing we study because we are studying the interactions of all life forms on Earth. And it is also the most vital thing because without any single one of these interactions, our biosphere starts to descend into chaos. As we go further into this unit, I want you to start paying attention to places where you do see biodiversity within biology. Biodiversity happens on all levels of biology. I mean, talking about genes, and think about just how many different variations of genes we have, all the way up to biomes, these 9 biomes being so unique and different from each other. Unit will focus more on the ecological level, but keep in mind that having diversity at all levels of biology is extremely important for us to continue living. What do I mean by the ecological level? That brings me to point number 2, which is that within a biome, in the biosphere, you can have multiple levels of organization, very much like we saw with species classification in our earlier unit.
So for concept 2, that's going to be levels of organization in the biosphere. The biggest thing, of course, is going to be the biosphere itself. Basically, all areas of the world that can sustain life. I'm going to talk to you about a couple more levels that we can break down the biosphere into, just to make it easier to study. In order to do that, I'm going to recruit my lovely and talented sister Anna to help me draw some things for you. And as you're drawing, I want you to either draw your own diagram or to take notes in our regular 2-column format in your notebook. So the keywords that you're looking for as you're drawing this out are going to be an ecosystem, a community in the biological sense, a population, and finally, probably the one that you have heard before, an organism. Just like in classification, these are being sorted from big down to small, largest to smallest level. Biosphere containing all life on Earth, organism being one single thing. An organism is going to be just a single living being, an entity that can live independently and on its own. An organism would fall into one of our 6 kingdoms: animal, plant, fungi, or protista, or bacteria. A population is going to be a group of organisms of the same species that live and interbreed in the same area. Now, we have been drawing quite a bit because the next level up is going to be all the populations that live in the same area and interact together. So this can include all sorts of living organisms. We're talking plants, animals, bacteria, fungi that all live in the same area and interact together. The name for this is going to be a community. Now, you'll notice that we are starting to add in a bunch of abiotic factors, things like rivers, which is water, non-living, sunlight, which is also non-living, any rocks, dirt, or terrain, more non-living things. An ecosystem is going to be when you take a community with all the living populations in an area and you combine it with all the abiotic factors that they interact with. Things like sunlight and heat, which are really going to influence how they interact with each other. Things like water and water sources, precipitation, and finally the terrain that these living organisms are living on: stones, dirt, earth, etc. All of these abiotic things actually play a huge role within the ecosystem, and they're going to really control how the organisms live both independently and together. Now, clearly, the next level up is going to be when you take several ecosystems and put them together. And that is going to be called a biome. A biome is a group of ecosystems. They're classified by specific plants and animals that only occur or only. Biomes are quite large and undefined because they're any region in the world that has the climate to support these specific types of ecosystems. We come to the largest level, or the biosphere. The biosphere is going to be all portions of the earth where life is supported. You might be wondering, are there really any portions of the earth where life isn't supported? Yes. There's some places that are simply too cold or too hot to actually support life. That cannot be considered part of the biosphere is down here in Chile. It's called the Atacama Desert,
It has not seen rain in years. So on top of the lack of water, there's also a really high elevation, lots of acidity. Even the archaea bacteria don't survive in this desert. And just last November, scientists discovered a place in Ethiopia called Dolol. This is a geothermal hot springs. It's filled with lots of sulfur and is super acidic, on top of being a really high temperature. And as a result, no life. Not part of the biosphere. That's it for biology this week. Your practice is going to just be some reflection questions on Google Classroom. I hope you can join me for a virtual lecture given by a PhD candidate at the University of Florida on human evolution, especially if you are someone who wants to challenge these beliefs or is very curious about these beliefs. I think this will be a very interesting lecture. It's going to be happening on Tuesday at 7 p.m. and the link is in Google Classroom.